Let's get into the night's teaching and go to Romans chapter 12. Next Monday is going to be our Monday night prayer meeting. So appreciate Bob hosting that and putting that together and being here, faithfully open up and make that available. That starts at 6 o'clock, goes to 7 o'clock, and that's next Monday evening. Because it's going to be April 1st, this Sunday. Yeah, this Sunday is April 1st. April 2nd will be the next day. You know, the atheist holiday is April Fool's Day, right? You knew that. And the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. It's in the book of Proverbs. Everybody at Romans 12? I'm going to start at verse 1. Last week I started at verse 3. I think I'll jump up to 1. It says this, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, which means his pardon, to offer your bodies. Note that your bodies are important. How? As a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is, say it's mine, this is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, the world's way of thinking, the world's way of living, the world's way of acting. However, he says, but be transformed, metamorphosed, by the renewing of your mind, so your mind is being renewed, then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. You say, what do I renew my mind to? You renew it to the Word of God.
Amen. That's right.
Because that is the owner's manual. In other words, when you buy a brand new car, you get an owner's manual. It tells all about the car, the cylinders, what kind of oil to put in it, what kind of fuel to put in it, so it runs at optimum level. It's the same with the believer. The Bible is the owner's manual. Verse 3, now here's what I pick it up from last week. For by the grace, charis, unmerited favor, given me, I say to every one of you, that's every believer, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment. So he's not saying don't think of yourself less than you ought, but just don't think of yourself more than you should. He says, for each of us has, but with sober judgment in accordance with the faith that God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, how many of you know we've got fingers, toes, arms, legs, ears, etc., and then internal organs. And these members do not all have the same function. So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all others. So he's using the analogy of the physical body for the body of Christ. He then says, we have different gifts, plural, that means more than one, according to the grace, charis, unmerited favor that you've received or have given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it's serving, then serve. How many of you know there are many people in the body of Christ that have the gift of serving? It is a dominant one. Diakonos is the Greek word. It's the same word that's used in the book of Acts chapter 6, and it says, choose out 7 men full of the Holy Spirit and wisdom from among you, and appoint them to the task that I've set before them, which was to serve or to wait on tables. Okay? So serving is very practical. Then he goes, if it's teaching, then teach. If it's encouraging, then give encouragement. If it's giving, then give generously. Even as Holly talked about a moment ago, giving, strawberry jam. Anytime anybody wants to give me strawberry jam, I'll take it. I love strawberry jam. It's my favorite jam there is. In fact, I prefer jam over jelly, to be honest with you. I like all the seeds in it. I like blackberry jam. I like boysenberry jam. I like strawberry jam. I like jam, and lots of it. In fact, when I go to McDonald's on Saturday mornings, guys, you're all invited to that. What I'll do when I get pancakes, I said when, because I don't always get pancakes, I'll take one out, set it aside for my dog. I'll take the other 2, and I'll put jam on it, and then syrup goes on it. Try that sometime. He then says, if it's to lead, do it diligently. Leadership is a gift. If it's to show mercy, do it cheerfully. Going on, I'm going to read on. Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves, never be lacking in zeal. He says, but keep your spiritual fervor, note this, here's that word again, serving the Lord. Never be lacking in zeal. That means be excited, be on fire. I so appreciate, I'll tell you what I appreciate. The reason I like Betty and I like Marilyn opening our services is these ladies are full of fire.
That's right.
I like the zeal that they have. And the reason they have zeal is because they have a passion for Jesus. They're passionate about their zeal for God. And that doesn't mean I don't like the rest of you either. But I'm just saying there's something about a zeal that is evident
Amen.
when they share. It says, but keep your spiritual fervor, note this, serving the Lord. Don't let the fire go out. It's really what he's saying. Don't let your fire go out. Don't get weary. Don't get wore out. Keep it fired up. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice, here it is. This is the underliner. Practice hospitality. Hospitality is a kindness towards a stranger is really what hospitality is. Now, you and I, within the body, we become very comfortable with family. How many of you know that? However, when people come, we call them guests because it's on purpose. We want them to stick around. They're invited. We want them to know that they've been invited. And as a guest, we want to demonstrate hospitality to them. Our hospitality from Word and Spirit International Church really begins from the parking lot to the door, to inside the door, to the nursery, to the children's department, to them sitting right next to you. So we have an opportunity to practice hospitality. It's not just somebody gets to have the gift of hospitality, but we all get to practice hospitality. Amen. Okay? Those that really, really have that gift, they're like over and above. But we all should demonstrate a friendliness and a warmth to people. All right. If you were with us last week, I gave you an introduction. I'm not going to repeat that. I gave you 5 points. They were healthy systems solve root problems. This is often people problems. 2, healthy systems will save you money. A good plan is just a system that creates extra time, which causes you to buy things earlier at a less price. So there's planning involved. Okay? And healthy systems allow your volunteers not to hate church. They're not doing it for money, but will allow them to do it at an elevated level. For instance, whenever somebody makes out a schedule, whether it's for ushers or greeters or whomever, or working in the nursery, usually they do it quarterly. And the reason they do it quarterly is that you can look at that, and if you know you're going to be gone on a certain day that are weeks out, you can say to them, hey, listen, I need to change or adjust my schedule because I know I'm going to be gone. Can we do that? How many of you that's just responsibility?
That's right.
And I often parallel our responsibility to the Lord is even greater than it is to anything else. Why would the Lord's work be any less than you would show to your own employment?
That's right.
Or any commitment?
Right.
Whenever you commit to something, whether it's to have fun, it's to recreate, or to meet with somebody, just to meet with them. How do you know it's always courteous to be on time, to be where you say you're going to be? And if you can't, then you call and say, I can't make it for whatever reason. Hello. Yep. It's the same for the house of the Lord. It should be no different. Yep. Now, I'm going to make a statement. I hope it's not offensive to anybody. And I don't think it is because you guys are all faithful. I'm looking at a bunch of faithful people here. But oftentimes, the reason people need to renew their mind, I read that statement earlier about renewing the mind. It's on purpose. Because when you get born again, it doesn't mean that you automatically change your behavior.
That's right.
Behavior is changed over a process of time.
That's right.
Just like bad behavior is learned, you have to learn good behavior. And the sad thing is often, I shouldn't say often, sometimes in the body of Christ, you find flaky people.
That's right.
Look at somebody say, he's talking about somebody other than you right now. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say flaky people? There is no follow through. They can't be counted on. Now, do you know the Bible does have something to say about that? It has something in the Proverbs that says, don't lean against a reed. That's common sense, isn't it? Why? Because the reed can't carry the weight of an individual. It'll snap, it'll break. So in the same way, the Lord is saying that we then have to develop and grow in to a behavior that is trustworthy, can be counted on, and be depended on. I mean, you know, the responsibility that you give to a kid is different than the responsibility you give to an adult.
That's right. Amen.
Because they can handle more responsibility, unless they're flaky. And there's nobody here tonight. So he says, renew your mind so that you will be a faithful, dependable, reliable person.
That's right. Amen. That's good.
That goes a long way just in work in general.
That's right. Yep.
That we are hireable, dependable, and that employers love believers because they can be counted on. All right, enough of that. Let's go on. Healthy systems work when you are not. Healthy systems lead to healthy churches. And then I read this conclusion: the business of the church is disciple making. The bottom line for pastors, staff, and department heads is to make disciples. If you're here on a Wednesday, you should be a department head. That means that you're showing up with great regularity, and I can count on you. You should be a department head or a leader at some level. Now, that's a challenge. That's not a put down, by the way. That is a challenge to you to say that you have the stability by being here week in and week out, that I know I can count on you showing up. Okay, that's step number one. If I can't count on somebody showing up, then there's no way I'm putting them over a department. Now, here's another statement. This was Jesus' statement. This isn't John's statement. Are you ready for this one? This is a powerhouse statement. Are you ready? If you're faithful in the small things, you'll be faithful in the much. Now, that's Bible.
Right.
But it's a principle that business uses all the time. If you're faithful in the small or the little, you'll be faithful in the much. You can be counted on, trustworthy. Okay? So going on, coaches call out potential in their players, teach them fundamentals, but put them through practice drills and encourage them towards victory. I shared with you last week, I watched the girls' game, the week before, and they did so good, and they went up to Spokane, and they were headed towards the Final Four. They lost it in the Elite Eight. They still did a tremendous job, in my estimation. Watched that game as well. And but it was just, again, those systems and the basics and following through. Okay? Going on. And they do it all while trying to win each game. In a similar fashion, we are called to develop people's gifts and talents through the process of discipleship. Well, getting ready for the weekend and Wednesday, which comes around with amazing regularity. Our job is not to create memorable and meaningful weekend experiences. In other words, yay, I won a top last week. Give me a break. I'm not a three-ring circus leader. I'm not trying to top last week. I just want to do what the Lord wants for this service.
Amen.
What He wants.
Amen.
But our job is not to create memorable and meaningful weekend experiences, but to create disciples who understand what it means to follow Christ. We have people with minor league skills coming to our church. It's our responsibility to turn them into major league players. The purpose of leadership is to create more leaders, not more followers. Someone in every ministry should be charged with the task of making sure the ministry is effectively accomplishing the mission. This includes tracking data and making system improvements. And as I said last week, the reason we take role, and we take role in nursery, we take role in the kids, we take role on Wednesday mornings, we take role in the intercessory prayer time, all of that. Why do we do that? It's on purpose, because we're tracking data. How are we doing? If something is falling off, we've got to say, what is going on? There has to be some analysis. That's just the practical aspect of doing ministry.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I have a ministries list, and I'm going to go through these. And I'm going to chat about each of them a little bit. Some of them are not happening right now. Some of them may have never happened. But how many of you know if you aim at nothing, you're sure to hit it?
That's right.
If you aim at nothing, you are sure to hit it.
That's right.
We want to aim at something.
That's right.
Now, last week, I hope you remember the statement that I made a statement. Actually, it was Sunday morning. And that was this statement. In order to go where you need to go, you've got to begin acting like that in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to be a church of 200 people, we've got to act like a church of 200 people. Our systems need to function at that level.
That's right.
Okay? So we have to start thinking that way. So that means all of the department heads have to start thinking that way. They can't think, well, this is just good enough because it's just us home folks. Hey, that ain't going to get it done.
No.
We've got to think, where do I want to be in 6 months, in 12 months, a year and a half, 24 months out. So we have to change our thinking to that and act accordingly. For instance, right now, we don't have this first thing on my list, which is parking lot attendance, do we?
No. Not yet.
We really should. It exhibits a level or a standard that is really important. Anybody ever been to Disneyland, Magic Mountain, Seven Flags, whatever? The first thing that you do when you drive on the property, you go through a booth, you pay for your ticket to get even to park. We're not charging anybody to park here. But then you have guys that are flagging you in and showing you where to park. Is that right? It just speaks of an excellence factor. You say, well, we really don't have anybody that can do that. We don't? You mean out of our church, there's nobody that could put on a little vest and go out there and be acknowledged and say, hi, good morning, how are you? And have a guest parking spot where we thought if somebody would be here and that our guests could park at. That's just for them. That's up front. They don't have to walk a long ways to get there. How many of you like to park close? And anywhere. The store, whatever. You're looking for the best premium parking spot. So I want us to think from an outsider's perspective, not an insider's perspective, from a guest perspective. Okay, so the parking lot attendant. Then our greeters that are there, anticipating somebody walking through that door. Now here's where hospitality comes in big. Warm, smiling, handshake, good morning, how are you? We're so glad that you're here. It is not the place to have the regular attender stop and talk to you for 5 to 10 minutes telling you all about their week. No, you need to say, go on, go find your seat, go minister to somebody else. Pastor, you're so mean. No, I'm just telling you, we have to be serious about this stuff. And it begins right there. So if we're just chit-chatting among ourselves and the guest comes in and then we're busy chit-chatting and we're missing our responsibility of really helping them, then we're missing it.
That's right.
So greeters, when they come in, that they're shaking their hands, smiling. By the way, do you know that every one of you can be an informal greeter, whether you're at the door or not?
That's right.
What do I mean by that? If you see a person that is new to our church, I encourage you. I empower you. That means I'm giving you the authority. You've been transferred and delegated authority to go up to them, to shake their hand, to introduce yourself to them. If they're by themselves, say, would you like to sit by me today? Now, I know for some introverts that they're probably going to have a real hard time, but I'm appealing to you extroverts. Okay? You know what an extrovert is? They're out there and loving it, okay? So go out and just encourage them and just say, hey, we're so glad you're here today. And would you like to sit by me? That way it makes them feel comfortable. And I think that's important. Then let's go on to, so the greeters, even them giving direction to people when they walk in, like signage. Obviously, we want good signage that says, and by the way, restrooms are huge. People don't really realize how important when they walk in, they have to go potty, they have to visit the bathroom. They need to know where that thing is. Or here's the observation for our greeters. If you see that they have children, what you can say is, we have a children's ministry. Would you like me to show you where it's at? Like me to show you where it's at. And the reason is because there should be more than one greeter at that door. You can leave the one behind, the other. Take that family, an appropriate, age-appropriate nursery here, kids ministry there. Okay? Did you hear that? Would you like to show me? Everybody practice with me. Would you like me to show you where the children's ministry is at? Or the nursery, depending on the age of the children. Okay? You can all do that, can't you?
Yes.
Awesome. So that's what greeters do. They're smiling, they're shaking hands, they're personable, and they're giving directions and directing people, helping them to get where they need to go. Now, most people are not offended by that. If you walk into Walmart, somebody's going to be there to greet you. Hey, how are you? How you doing today? So glad to see you. I mean, they get paid to do that. Yeah, we don't. Judy goes, I don't know how much, but they get paid. Well, it's basically minimum wage is about $10 an hour now in Oregon. So, yeah. Or as my mother-in-law would say, it's better than a poke in the eye and a jab in the cuticle.
That's right.
Yeah. So greeters are huge. They really are. Because you're the first person that they're going to see when they walk in. Now, can I tell you something? People will make a decision to come back to a church within the first 5 minutes they've been in the place. The music may have not played. The preacher may have not preached or any of those things. But most people are sizing us up the moment they walk in, and they will make a decision whether they return or not. Based on how they're greeted once they walk in, how people make them feel. Now, being huge doesn't make people great either, because I've been in some huge churches, and it doesn't matter to me because I'm not there to be the huge church, large church, in-between church. I'm there to meet with the Lord, so it doesn't really give a rip to me at all. But it's not all about me, and it's not all about you, or it shouldn't be at this point in your journey.
That's right. That's right.
Right? Maturity means I'm grown up, and because I'm grown up, I want to facilitate and help others to grow up in Jesus as well, and especially those that do not have a relationship with him yet. Yeah. So that's what greeters do. They're a huge component about the receptivity and the warmth of a congregation. Next is ushers. So ushers, because we don't necessarily have bulletins, what do our ushers do besides in a lot of places? Well, they hand out a bulletin. Well, beyond that, the ushers really assist people in giving them direction. There's how do I direct? They're kind of seamless. They don't want to be seen, but they also are very assistant-oriented. They help people. If they don't have a seat, they help them find a seat. Yeah, that's exactly right. They're a huge component of the ministry. They also need to carry that warmth, that smile, that hospitality. We're so glad that you're here. And then for us, there are certain protocols that we do that we have expected of ushers. And that is that there's a couple of things. First of all, it's helping direct people as well to the kids' ministries, etc. But it's also when it comes to when people come in late. How many of you know, here's another factoid, just so you know this, most guests, first-timers, always come late. It's on purpose. Why? They want to check you out without anybody mobbing them, number one. They often want to sit in the back row. These are just reality checks. And so that's why we all don't sit in the back row, right? Because we want that to be free for them. So when they come in, then the ushers are a huge component of that ministry at that point in giving them direction or helping them to find a seat. Most of them do not want to be marched down front and put on the front row unless it's me. Now, there are maniacs that go to every conference under the sun. And at every conference, they stand in line for hours and wait till the doors are open, and they stampede in like crazy, throw their books and everything else to save chairs for everybody else or whatever. They love the front row. But most guests aren't conference junkies.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, that's why we want to leave that back section for them. Now, I know you've heard me say some of this before, but it's just a reminder again to how we're ministering and how we're thinking, because if we forget, if we don't bring it up once in a while, we forget. And we need to be reminded. Apostle Paul said, it's good for me to put you in remembrance of this. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting us in remembrance of things I've shared before, but it is a reminder once again that what we need to be doing, especially to you folks that are here on Wednesdays, because I know that you'll help me in carrying this out. Ushers also then take the offering. So when they come forward, here, let me just debrief once again. So if you ever get called upon to usher, Rod, wave your hand back there. He may come and say, hey, I need you to help Sunday morning, Wednesday night, whatever, and you can be available. I've all told you my story about being up in Toronto at the Toronto Airport Vineyard. I was up there on their 16th anniversary, and I'd been there before. Helen had been there before that too, back in the days of the revival days, but it was on their 16th anniversary. And I was there by myself, and I was there for a conference as well. They were hosting a conference. So I'm up front like I normally am. I think I'm like, 2 rows back or something. And their head usher comes to me and says, hey, can you help take offering today? And I said, sure, why not? He doesn't know who I am from anybody. Can you help me take offering? Sure. I mean, I've seen offering enough. I've taken offering enough. I know what I'm doing. I can do this. So when it comes time, I line up with all the rest of the guys across the aisles, and a guy in this aisle, the guy in that aisle, or gal in this aisle, and so forth. And, it's real simple. When it comes time, you stand up there, alert and attention. You pray. You hand out the buckets. They go down the line from one end, start to A, and it goes to B, or A to Z. How is that? And they just pass it on down. It's really straightforward. Everybody at the front of the line passes. If it's the passing out, first of all, it's passing out the offering envelopes. They start at this end, it goes to that end. So it starts here, goes that way. Same with the offering bucket, starts at this end and goes to that end. Now, let me just remind all of our ushers and usherettes that when I say, or whoever says it's time for offering, at that point, the ushers automatically come forward. They don't need to be told. They know within their brain, it's my turn, I'm on. They come up and they immediately pass out those envelopes. Once they've passed the envelopes, they come back and stand at attention, smiling, 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 right up front, looking at whoever's taking the offering. When they're done praying, they don't sit. By the way, the ushers don't get to sit down. I don't get to sit down when I'm pouring concrete. We poured 10,000 square feet of concrete on Monday. You know how much that is? It is a lot. I had 1 10-minute break in that entire time from when we started till we were done. No breaks other than 10 minutes. That's it. I didn't get a break. So when ushers are on, they don't get a break. They don't get to sit down. It's not casual. We are not casual. We act like we know what we're doing, right? So they're at attention. When I call for the ushers to come, they stand there, they do their thing, and then once they pass out the envelopes, they come back. They're right here standing at attention, ready to go. When the prayer's done, they pass the offering buckets. It goes from A to Z again, and then 2 guys go back here or to whoever, and they take it back. Always 2. Everybody say always 2. Okay, why? Because no misappropriation, no accusations. It's absolutely on purpose. Okay. Now, whenever we minister at the end of a service, in anybody, myself, guest, whoever is praying for anybody, anytime hands are laid on anybody, we always need an usher behind them.
That's right.
I should never have to ask for an usher. A guest speaker should never have to ask for an usher. The usher should automatically be there whenever we're laying hands on anybody in altar ministry. Okay? It's just across the board. It's part of their protocol and their job description. They got a big job, don't they? Man, Rod, the ushers have a lot of responsibility. But I know they can handle it, and I know you can handle it. So that's where our ushers come in. They're a huge component of what we're doing. So if you're ever called upon, you know what to do, right?
That's right.
Good deal. All right, let's go on to the worship team. Oh, by the way, the ushers also get called upon if we have to throw somebody out, which is rare that I've ever had to see that happen, to be honest with you. Very rare that I've had to. In fact, the only time I think it ever happened when I wasn't even here. And you know what? That's just like the enemy anyway. He always plays his cards when, when the dad's away, he's going to try something. So it's crazy. All right, I'm going to give you one more and then we'll be done because I'm roasting up here. It's hot. Is it hot in here today?
Yeah.
I think we need to start adjusting the old thermostat a little bit on Wednesdays. Oh, okay. All right. And plus it was warm today. So guest relations, and this is where if you have a passion for any of this, be sure to let me know because this is really huge. Guest relations have to do with once a guest has filled out a card. Okay, and by the way, those cards are given at the front when people come in, so they should receive a card. And then we don't need to worry about having them, hovering over them like a hawk, filling that out. That's not our job. Okay, so at any time, we're not dogging somebody, especially in service. Not during service. If anybody does that, it'll be me. It'll be from here. And I'll just say, listen, if you're here today and your guest or whoever's doing announcements or doing, and by the way, it's in our worship order. I don't know if you know that, but we always have in our worship order where somebody welcomes guests. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're, let me just say this. Welcoming guests means you're welcoming everybody, but specifically a first-time guest or a newer guest. Say, we're so glad you're here today. If you'd do us a favor, if you'd fill out pertinent information on that card, it will give us a record of you being here today. We'd like to send you a letter in follow-up. Usually I'm doing emails now. I'm not doing letters so much anymore because everything's digital. And we're asking for their email, and especially if they email us, we then are able to email them back, which is great. And so what we do is we just follow up with that, and we'll do that during the service. So nobody needs to dog them. Ushers don't need to dog them. Greeters don't need to dog them. Whoever's up here, it's going to be their responsibility when they're welcoming guests. And here's what we'll say: if you didn't get a card, would you mind raising your hand? We'll get a card to you. If they don't go beat them up to get them a card. Just leave it alone. We want them to come back. Hello? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So guest relations is gathering the info, which means that's part of whoever's doing the welcoming guests, but it also means follow-up calls and delivery gift bags. So what we want to do is not only send them an email, but we'd like to have them within basically 42 hours, have a phone call with them having been here at the church. Now, Betty helps me with some of that. I know that she gets the guest cards, and I get a guest card. I think Dave does as well. And so we also get the prayer requests on that as well. So we just want to be good at doing our follow-up, our due diligence, and letting people know we really care. And so hopefully that makes sense to everybody. By the way, anybody, if you go to any place anymore, you fill out anything anymore, you're going to get an email from people. You're going to get text from people. So that's the arena we live in. And then ideally, it would be nice to, within the week, to have a gift bag delivered. And so we used to do that. We're not doing that. We've fallen off the wagon on that, unfortunately. We need to get back on the wagon on this one. Be more intentional. Everybody say more intentional. That's where our systems have broke down. And remember what I said. I take full responsibility for that. At the end of the day, it lands at my doorstep. So we need to get those systems back in place so that we're really on top of it and that we really are saying to people, we care about you. Now, they may say, go jump in the lake. I don't want anything to do with you. You guys are a bunch of nuts. That's all right. But we've done everything we've done between us and the Lord to be presentable and to do our part to genuinely let them know we really care about them and their family.
Amen.
All right.